Good evening, members, officers, members of the public, and people listening at home, and welcome to today's planning meeting. Can I ask everybody to switch their mobile phones off, please, and do not use them during the meeting? All right. Okay. Right, we'll take item 1, apologies for absence.
So we received apologies from councillors Atwell here and Mir.
Any more apologies?
Yes, thank you, Chair. It is Henamir.
Okay.
She's not here.
Thank you. Item 2, declaration of interest. Anybody? Yeah, John?
I received emails and correspondence on both the topics we're discussing this evening.
Councillor Ison?
Yes, I too received emails on both the items.
Councillor Todd?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. At the last meeting,
Go on.
I declared that I was on the Duke's Meadow Management Trust. It's not recorded in the minutes, but I'll just reiterate that point. Thank you.
Okay, we'll come to the, yeah. Councillor Luki?
I visited both locations. Yeah, so the laser quest with Councillor Byring
Okay,
prior to the aborted discussion.
We didn't play laser tag though. We just looked at it.
Play tag.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah.
right. Any more? Councillor Lal?
Emails regarding agenda item 4 and 5.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Councillor
the
Lee?
same emails.
I think we all had it, emails on item 4.
Same
Yeah?
site visit and an email from a councillor, Councillor Amy Croft. Yeah.
Oh, yes, we all had that as well, yeah. So we had an email from Councillor Amy, and from both items, yeah. Thank you. Right, we'll take item 4, 130 Park Road, pages 11 till 20. Oh, sorry, we haven't done minutes. Thank you for reminding me. Thank you. Okay. Item 3, I missed it, sorry. Minutes for the last meeting. I'll take both for correction and matter rising together. Councillor Todd?
Chair, I did raise it. My memory wasn't shown.
Yeah, that's noted, yeah. Any more corrections or matter rising? No? Thank you. Now we'll go to item 4, which is 130 Park Road, pages 11 to 20. And who's taking it? Okay, all yours.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is a two-story semi-detached single-family house within the Chiswick House Conservation Area. The site is within flood zone 3A. This first image shows the front of the property from Park Road. You can see it has a low brick wall as a front boundary. The next image is the rear of the property, which you can see has been extended by a single-story rear extension and a two-story side extension. The proposal is for the creation of a basement underneath the footprint of the original house and the later rear and side extensions. The basement will have internal access only to the ground floor level. There will be front and rear light wells. In terms of use, the basement will be used as a gym, media room, and utility and storage rooms. 5 objections were received to the application, and 1 was also received in support. These objections focused mostly on the size of the basement, the use of the basement, and some flood risks and concerns. The proposal is considered acceptable in principle. The basement is considered to be of an acceptable size and would be discreetly located with limited visibility from the front of the property. A condition has been attached to ensure the basement is not used as sleeping accommodation, and a full flood risk assessment has been submitted with the application, which outlines flood risk mitigation measures. And officers are therefore recommending approval of the application. I hand back to the Chair.
Thank you. Questions for the officer? I'll ask you a question first. What's the difference between the last
Between the laundry room and the media room on the basement plan? This has now been removed. Furthermore, there was also a second front light well, just where the laundry room is shown on the plans. That's also been removed. And the front light well and the rear light well have both been reduced in depth.
And it says on page 13, the last application was for a primary use for the family, and this isn't. How can we make sure that this is not going to be used for the family residential purposes?
Sorry, could you repeat that?
How can we make sure they cannot use for primary use, like living there?
There's a condition attached to ensure it's not used as primary living accommodation or sleeping arrangements.
Thank you. Okay, any more questions? Councillor Stroud first.
Yeah, just it's really one of clarification. Reading through it, there seems to be a couple of phrases which appear a little interchangeable, because as the chair's just asked, the first one was refused on the grounds that it was for bedrooms or accommodation. But reading through it, it says occupied as a separate dwelling independent of the main house. And then later on, it talks about bedrooms, because obviously bedrooms could be there, but integral to the main house. I can understand that it shouldn't be a separate dwelling per se, but can you just enlighten us on that? And I understand the conditions would prevent bedrooms or prevent it being a separate dwelling.
They would prevent both bedrooms and a separate dwelling per condition.
All right, Councillor Todd.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Look, I'm reading the addendum report. I'm interested in the local flood risk management strategy. We've had similar problems in Hartington Road where we refused. The Thames is behaving rather naughtily and is slowly rising, as is the Greenwich thing testify. Are you happy that this will meet the requirements of the new strategy or the current one?
Yes is the direct answer. Yeah, we are due an update to the document that was referred to, but it's not going to change the overall policy framework insofar as it relates to dwellings in the flood risk zone. The problems that we had in Hartington Road, which I'm sure some of you may recall, was to do with the actual designation, and it was right next to a flood rule, and whether that flood rule was providing defences. This isn't the same situation here. There isn't the same risk from the River Thames. It's not the same flood zone. It's not the same flood risk issues. And when it comes to flood zone 3A, which is this, the Environment Agency's response is just that they don't ask to be consulted on these. They have some standing advice on it, which this follows. So we are satisfied it complies with those policies.
Okay, you indicated in your answer that you're aware of the new policy. The person objecting is using that as part of his grounds to flood. Does that disadvantage him or?
Well, so it's not going to be an adopted policy document. It's not going to change the standing advice from the Environment Agency. It's not going to change the designation. It's not going to change the general approach. So there won't be anything material within that document to your decision making tonight.
Councillor Bowling.
Yeah, on the flood risk. So there's this question from the objector about could it be deferred until we have that result in? But am I right in thinking that the question is going to be around not that basements increase the risk of flooding, more about how a basement would be susceptible to flooding? Is that fair?
Yes, so it is essentially that. So when we look at flooding, we look at it's kind of two issues here: groundwater flooding, groundwater conditions. Because there's no increase in hard surfacing here, we don't believe it increases the risk of flooding to properties within the area. And then you're right, generally the Environment Agency will focus on risks to the property itself. And because we've added the conditions about no sleeping accommodation at basement level, that's key in this situation. There's the access route from the basement to ground floor. It complies with those safety standards from the Environment Agency. This standing advice also talks about a number of design measures, but those are in building regulations, those are building standards.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bhatti.
Thank you, Chair. When I look at this plan, this really looks to me as a living accommodation. There's laundry, there's utility rooms, there's shower rooms, very much so. And if the application was granted, how are we going to enforce it? How are we going to monitor the accommodation, how it's being used, please? Thank you.
Yeah, so it would be covered under a condition, and it would a normal planning enforcement process would cover it.
So who would go out of hours checking who's who's living there and who's using it?
On the flip side, we take issue with you would have no success in appeal if you were to suggest that the local planning authority aren't capable of enforcing a planning condition, and this is a very general planning condition that would attach. I mean, it's always a risk of extensions. They could subsequently lead to subdivision of a house. It's a problem in planning. I don't think anyone's disagreeing with that, but we, to try and test this application on those grounds, I would tentatively suggest, and I'm sure my legal colleague would agree, that you don't stand a chance in appeal if you just suggest you can't enforce your own conditions.
Thank you, Matthew. And Councillor Hassan?
Thank you, Chair. Has there been any steps to mitigate risks from fire or fire assessments done for this particular dwelling?
So all planning applications come with a fire statement, and the fire statement has been submitted with this application.
Thank you. Another one, Jack. This condition, is it already there, or somebody has to propose it? The condition, not use the family use.
It's already
It's
on
already in the
application. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Luki?
I know this should stand alone as its own application, but how many other basement conversions are there in that part of that part of the ward there? I do recall a couple of years ago we were looking at Hadley Gardens, a bit closer to Heathfield Terrace. So, what are there any others down here? And are the conditions that you're setting similar?
I'm not familiar whether there are any basements in the immediate vicinity, but these conditions are standard conditions which put for the new basement development.
Okay. Thank you. Right, I can't see any more hands. So can I now invite Councillor Peter Thompson, please? Councillor Thompson, you have 5 minutes, and we will let you know when it's 30 seconds left.
Thank you, and thank you for your permission to speak tonight, Mr. Chairman. I was approached by most of the residents who sort of live around this property, and generally speaking, I'm not one for calling things in unless I think there's a bigger issue worth pondering. Okay, obviously the residents themselves would have spoken tonight, but they only actually in reality had a couple of weeks' notice of this meeting. I think it's about that sort of time scale. And as it happened, the vast majority of them aren't around, so they sent me instead. I won't pick up some of the sort of points which I accept, and I'm delighted that the members of the committee have raised some of the issues. But there's just a couple in terms of planning, and then perhaps a wider issue just to ponder. The council's residential extension guidelines do say the basement should not exceed beyond the main front or sides of the house, and this does. So that's just a fact. And obviously, it says within the report it slightly exceeds. Well, one person's definition of slight is somebody else's definition of well exceeds. So it's bigger than the property. The other issue, which this one surprises me. I know for a fact, given I've seen the residents' letters of objection, that a point they did make was that it could potentially have an impact on some very long established and significant trees. That was part of their application. I'm troubled that's not part of the report. So that's a question I think needs to be perhaps answered. There is a real concern that when we start digging out the basement, obviously it would have an impact on the roots. And they're the two main points I would put forward to you. I fully accept the issues about the conditions, and I understand where we're coming from on that one. Now, obviously, again, the residents have made a lot of concern about the issue of flooding. And again, this is a risk area. I think last time I looked at a report from the council, there's about 16,000 properties in Hounslow that are at risk of flooding, and the vast majority of these are in the 3 Chiswick wards. And I would slightly take issue with
Boring.
So this tree, how far is the tree from the basement, proposed basement?
Right, so the tree, there's lots of trees in that area, obviously, but the tree we're talking about is, again, I'm reading from the letter that the objector, one of the neighbours, put forward. He said it's a few meters from the proposed excavation. Okay, and he claim, I think it was a he or a she, they claim that, you know, and obviously that's why I would have thought it would be mentioned within the report. They are concerned that it could propose a significant damage to the roots and therefore to the tree. We talk about a major, long-established tree. And I say I would just be asking the planning department just to perhaps inform you, as maybe they could answer that question for me, really.
Chair, can we maybe hear from?
When they do a presentation,
Yeah.
again, they'll
Yeah.
answer the question, yeah?
Right.
Okay, any more? Can't see any more hands. Yep, sorry, Councillor Stroud.
Yeah, just looking at the objections, Councillor Thompson, this looks like someone's dreamt up as many different objections as they can possibly think of on the basis they just don't want this development. And the flooding one is the sort of final grasp at it, and the possibility of a tree. And as we know, it's not just where the tree is, it depends on the type of tree as well, because some are protected and some aren't. But why do you think that they're set against it as they are? Because nothing they've put up is particularly substantial, and it just seems they don't want this development next to them. And when I read the letter, it did have that sort of slightly NIMBY smack to it, I have to admit. Your views?
I think anybody who objects to anything would marshal as many arguments as they could. I don't think that that's particularly to be criticised. I assume they've done like most of us would do. They would go through the planning guidance and find things that, in their opinion, obviously you're more than welcome to disagree. And I'm not saying I'm agreeing myself in all the points they've raised. And I think that NIMBY thing is real and true. As I've said, most of those properties on that road have been extended and developed. I think it's the basement is the concern. Obviously, the point that one of you made about it's virtually the same application as before, just they renamed some of the rooms, that does get people concerned, but I fully take on board, you know, I've been on this committee myself many years ago, that the condition is there and enforcement is, you know, what we do with it. So I think there is that concern. I think there is also an issue that I think people are perhaps just a little bit more aware of the bigger impact. And again, I'm sure 5-10 years ago, you know, many people were, I would say at the time, sadly, paving over front gardens and creating driveways, especially as on that road, parking schemes came in and so on. And I think that was, I think, a mistake in policy and a mistake for residents to go down that route. And I suppose when you have a property that they've seen expand to the side, they've seen a large swimming pool take away a big chunk of the garden, trees were taken down at the back. I suppose that this maybe is the straw that's breaking the camel's back. But I do take your point. There was a range of arguments there of varying strengths and weight, and obviously it's down to, you know, people on this committee to make a decision. Thank you.
Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. Obviously, the points you've raised about the tree and the extension beyond the front of the house, we'll obviously ask officers for feedback on that later. Am I right from the comments that, you know, you can see that within the parameters of the planning process, the national policy planning framework, the guidance that we have to follow in making decisions, that other than those 2 points, there really isn't a lot here materially to grasp on? And whilst I may share some of your concerns about the overall direction that enables people to go, people have a right to sort of improve their private homes as they would wish. You are accepting that is fundamentally the case, is that correct?
Yeah, I would. As you know, the residents made several points, and I haven't particularly alluded to those. You know, it's a subjective call whether the light wells at the front of the property are, you know, detrimental to the conservation area. It's very subjective. I haven't raised that one, and there's several others I haven't raised. I sort of tried to pick out the ones that I thought are worthy of consideration. And again, perhaps the reason why I called it in, which I honestly won't make a habit of, is that bigger concern, which I know is not ultimately, you know, it is within guidelines in terms of flooding. I've read the flood risk assessment in detail, and it makes sense. But I think there is a bigger concern. It is, again, not for your decision tonight, but it's more of a policy consideration. It's that accumulative effect. When it's basement after basement after basement, I've got no idea how many basements are on that section in the ward. But, you know, there is a bigger issue that perhaps somebody at some stage needs to have a think about. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Boring, you have a question? No, it's fine. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Thompson.
Thank you.
Can I now invite Mr. Henry Simpson, please, the applicant?
Brilliant.
Have 5 minutes, Mr.
Perfect.
Simpson, yeah?
I'll take nowhere near. Thanks for everyone's time. As everyone's heard, all the required tests and reports have taken place regarding the flood risk and been satisfied. To give some insight into why we're applying for the basement and more space. We sadly have 2 severely disabled sons, aged 10 now, who will live with us for life. Instead of giving the state the burden, we want to make more space for them to live with us, with their own sitting room. Gym is on there, yes. They do like exercising, and fitness is key for their health going forward. Boxing is a big thing and part of their life. Obviously, bedrooms have not been put on the plan. Like all teenagers and adults, they'll want their own space, although still living upstairs with us. The tree that was mentioned in the back garden, with respect to the garden work we did, Hounslow came and visited the tree. It was dying well before any garden work was done, so I don't really know why that's been mentioned. And other trees, I don't know of any big trees anywhere near where the basement's going to take place. That tree you can see there outside our property is probably the only one. So unless we really do get some dodgy builders, which we certainly will not do, I can't see that tree being affected at all. And with respect to the driveway, again, you know, it makes it a lot easier with the boys to get them in and out. That's pretty much it from me.
Thank you. Questions for Mr. Simpson? Yeah, Councillor Williams.
Hi, Mr. Simpson. You've obviously been listening to the debate so far, and you've heard raised about concerns about the basement potentially being used as a dwelling and that not being allowed, and there being a condition to stop that. And obviously then the concerns about how that would be enforced and could be enforced. Could you perhaps reassure the committee tonight that that basement will not be used as a sleeping area at all?
No, the boys both have bedrooms upstairs. You know, they need to be close to us as well. Seizures are an issue for the future. If they were down in the basement and we're up on the first floor, that's just not going to be possible. So to give them more space, yes, we'll have to move our laundry room down there. I know that was raised. You know, a shower room will be down there near the gym and that sort of stuff. But yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, any more questions? No? Thank you, Mr.
Great.
Simpson.
Thank you.
Okay, back to Jack. Can you answer those questions when you do a presentation?
Yeah, so in terms of the issue of trees, yeah, it does appear this might have been missed out of the report. But if members were concerned about the street tree, we could place a condition for root protection measures. In terms of the footprint of the basement, it would sit entirely underneath the current footprint of the house, including the extensions, except for the rear and front light wells and a very small section of the media room.
Any more questions? Sorry, any more questions for Jack? Yeah, Councillor Boring.
Yeah, sorry to obsess about trees, but is the tree we're talking about the tree on the public highway in this picture?
Is it on the public highway?
Is that the tree
I
we're
think
talking about?
this tree here is the one we're talking about.
And so you've got the pavement, a large front garden.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, fine, thank you.
I assume we're into the debate now. I don't know if there is much of a debate necessarily to be had. I'm happy to.
Can I just open for the debate and?
Oh, sorry, you go.
Yeah, okay, it's open for debate now. Councillor Stout.
I was heading down the stairs.
Okay, Councillor Williams then. Yeah.
I'd like to recommend approval.
And I've got a seconder. Okay, so it's been proposed by Councillor Williams. Sorry.
Including the tree condition or?
Well, that includes the 3 conditions.
Or not?
I'm happy for it to not have the tree condition.
Okay, so it's been proposed and seconded. We will take a vote for. Yep. And sorry, can you do that? Have you done it? Can we do it again, please? Give your hands up. Okay, nobody against. Thank you. No abstentions, so it's been approved. Thank you. Item 5, that's pages 21 to 38. And who's taking it? Matthew? Yeah. Matthew.
Thank you, Chair. So this is Chiswick Road Club in Duke's Meadow. I know it was in front of you last month, but I will give a brief refresher as to what's being proposed and also for the benefit of members who may not have been here at last planning committee. So Duke's Meadow is Metropolitan Open Lands. The application site is outlined in red on the plan on the screen in front of you. The small patch of land just off access from Dan Mason's Drive. We are looking at a 40 by 30 metre squared area, which has got this laser tag facility surrounded by fencing, which is up to 4.9 metres high on the front elevation. This is what's in the laser tag. It's got a number of facilities that serve to for the use, and then lighting around the outside, which is existing flood lighting, which used to serve a junior rugby pitch in this location, and just another couple of pictures of the fort in the middle there. So no objections from Sports England. We are suggesting that it's compatible with the Luce's Metropolitan Open Land because it's a recreation facility. It was deferred from the last planning committee because members wanted to see a temporary planning permission. So the application is now back in front of us with an agreed temporary permission. This time the applicants are proposing a 10-year temporary use for this facility. I'll leave it at that, if that's okay.
Thank you, Matthew. And questions for Matthew? Councillor Lukey?
Yeah, I'll ask a question.
Yes.
10 years temporary permission. How common is that? I've sat on a planning committee for a number of years. How common is 10 years temporary planning permission?
Yeah, it's fair to say it's unusual. We did actually make a recommendation last time for a permanent facility being acceptable. So on a similar basis, we're recommending that 10 years is okay, even though it's a long time, because we haven't focused on ascertained a reason for refusing an application that's shorter than 10 years. Obviously, that's for members to decide if they feel a shorter period of time would be suitable.
Just how did you arrive at 10 years? Why didn't you? How come you didn't arrive at 9 years or 5 years or 3 years or 2 years?
It's because what's been proposed to us, and we don't see a reason to refuse it. We haven't ascertained that reason for refusing a 10-year permission. So they proposed 10 years. We are presenting a case. Well, we're recommending approval on the basis that we don't see a problem with it being 10 years long. So we haven't picked and chosen. It's been proposed to us.
So looking at the papers, how was there any discussion? And I know there's no names on the with whom the applicant has discussed this, and I think that's another issue. Good that the head director of planning's here. We need a bit more information on our planning applications. That's an aside, but we can come back to that. They proposed 10 years. You didn't say, all right, let's discuss this. You just accepted 10 years.
I mean, yes, it's fair to say that they proposed to us 10 years and we're recommending approval on the basis of 10 years. Yes, that is what's happened. Yes, we didn't push for anything shorter than 10 years because we believe 10 years to be okay.
And sorry, I'm hogging this a little bit, just asking a few questions because Metropolitan Open Land is dear to me because we've got plenty of it in my ward. And we have, well, you didn't notice. You don't know about Ostley Park and the various ex-industrial playing fields. What other similar activities? I've been down there. There's golf. There's rugby. There's football. There's tennis. There's even a bit of golf. Where else have we got similar high-end non-sports recreational activity on Duke's Meadows?
I'm not aware of any comparable facility on Duke's Meadows. No, that's fair to say, but it does fit in with the recreation criteria. It does fit in as a recreation activity, which is one of the tests on developing on Greenbelt and Metropolitan Open Land. It just needs to be of a suitable scale.
Any more hands? Yeah, Councillor Boring.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Croft, as I said earlier, sent an email and she raised a question which I'd like to look at. She said, the MPPF unequivocally states local authorities should regard the construction of new buildings in Metropolitan Open Land as inappropriate and harmful and should only be approved in very special circumstances. She goes on to say, I'm not persuaded that the proposed and current use of the land for laser tag qualifies as very special circumstance. When I read in the report, it just sort of said, well, there is a provision for sort of leisure facilities. The sort of two things don't really make sense to me. Sort of, we're doing leisure facilities and requiring very exceptional circumstances. Can you help explain why they are very exceptional circumstances?
Sure. So a very special circumstances case is not being made here because the MPPF stipulates in Greenbelt, MOL is comparable to Greenbelt by virtue of other policies. It states that there's exceptions to that rule. So before you get to the very special circumstances case, you need to check if there's an exception to the Greenbelt rule, which is what's been missed out from that statement. And one of the exceptions is suitably sized recreation facilities. So we're suggesting it fits into that exception to that Greenbelt test. So you don't have to go to very special circumstances if it is an exception to that policy.
Right, Councillor Bhatti.
Thank you, Chair. I just go along with Councillor Lukey said over there. 10-year extension seems to be quite a long time. That could be seen as a permanent type of thing. That's the concern. And also the activity, what they're doing is great, maybe, but the charges may be also mentioned in one of the emails by Councillor Croft, is that the charges and the fees are so expensive that it just eliminates local people who are living very close to the area, and that's what the purpose of those open spaces is, to enjoy it. Thank you.
I didn't hear a question in there, sorry. It was more of a view. Was that a view? Is that fair to say it's a view? Sorry. Oh, so the 10 years. So the 10 years again. So of course, it's members to decide if they believe if 10 years is acceptable. If they don't, it's open to them to reduce that amount of time. It's just what's the difference between 5 years and 10 years, and it's probably going to come up later. I understand that. Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Are you saying that members can decide how many, what sort of time we'll? Yeah. Okay.
That's correct.
We'll come to that when we debate. Okay, Councillor Stout.
Yeah, without wanting to revisit the long debate we had last time about ownership and use, etc. But what we got to last time, it was there to one of the things it was going to do was plug a funding gap which had developed for the rugby club and the sports facilities. So accepting, yes, it is slightly expensive, but it's got to generate income. I think one of the issues we had, and it plays to the point that Councillor Lukey made, it's at the moment, it's a very small area of Duke's Meadows. And I think the fear among some members is, yes, we understand why it's been put in. It's to generate some income. It's to support the rugby club. But how do we ensure it doesn't become the thin end of a wedge? What are the safeguards that if we do permit this, and then in a year's time someone wants to put, a go-kart track in or whatever it happens to be? How can we guard against that?
So it's a simple case that when the new application were to come in for the go-kart track, you're now considering a cumulative effect of these activities. But what I would say is that there is a Duke's Meadow master plan. This entire area that you can see on the screen in front of you is part of the Duke's Meadow master plan area, which received planning permission in 2018. It's not been brought forward yet. This does not impact on the Duke's Meadow master plan. It was an area that was a car park. That car park can be shifted just to the southeast of this site. So you could deliver what was sought by the council at the time without compromising it with this particular scheme. Were you to put a go-karting track, as you suggest, into the proposal, then you are starting to compromise that, and then we would likely have issues with it. But I'm forecasting an application that hasn't been submitted yet.
Councillor Lal.
Chair, I wasn't privy to the previous meeting's information, but my concern is that Metropolitan Open Land, if this is the case in question, and it's not related at all to the rugby ground, so it's not their actual land as such. The reason I'm asking this question is that if this is a commercial venture and it's for profit only, although it's been alluded that it's to help supplement the income of the rugby grounds, fair enough. I don't think that's a justifiable excuse to allow something to happen if it's a commercial venture. The other thing is, if you can clarify, if I am wrong, does it have some kind of charitable status, perhaps, this venture, to maybe offset my concerns about being a totally private, commercial, for-profit venture.
Sure. It may well come up in representations that are being made, but there's no actual planning issue that we've talked about here. So I think there's an understanding that Chiswick Rugby Club leased this site from the council, and then they're going to use this money to improve a pavilion. That's not a consideration. We talked about very special circumstances cases. That might have been a case you could put forward for very special circumstances. That's not material to your consideration tonight. It's whether or not it's an exemption to the green belt, to the metropolitan open land status. So that's not a material planning consideration.
But if we are making, Chair, an exception in this case,
how the activity would contribute to Hounslow. The exception test is whether it's a suitably scaled recreation facility within metropolitan open lands. So sorry, I know I'm slightly avoiding your question. I'm trying to avoid what is a non-planning question, if that's okay.
Sorry, yeah, I just want to ask something. Yeah, okay. Any more, Councillor Lukey?
Sorry for asking again. When we allow or when we consider development on metropolitan open land, we do site tests for offering or looking at where we can put an application elsewhere in the borough. So I'll take it that there hasn't been any site tests to see if this facility can go anywhere else. But you can tell me whether it has or whether there have been a consideration of other locations in the borough to put this activity in. The other thing is what is the status of this land? Is it described as playing fields, as rugby, as a rugby facility or a playing fields facility? If you can tell us that, and in the past when we've approved other activities down here, we have sought community use of these said facilities or proposed facilities. But I'm just wondering what sort of community use could be offered here. And my suggestion is probably none. I can't imagine Grove Park Primary School taking kids down there to shoot each other with whether it's pellets or with lasers. But if you can tell us what those statuses are and whether this has been tested elsewhere, or is this just a suggestion that was probably made a few years ago that you can do this, we'll let you do it, but now the chickens have come home to roost.
Yeah, so my understanding is it hasn't been tested elsewhere. This has, again, my understanding is it's been historically been used as a junior rugby pitch, hence the floodlights being there. It has been rigorously tested against alternative provisions. We had to go through Sports England to see if they object to the loss of playing pitches, and Sports England have not objected to that on the basis of the wider master plan that's in place. As far as community facilities go, yeah, there isn't a community facility attached to that, but we've suggested that this isn't of a scale where we generally request that community facility, whereas for the wider master plan we clearly would do.
Sorry, Chair, is the master plan in place then?
No, so it's an approved scheme
Right.
which hasn't been implemented.
Right. Okay. So if it's been approved, it doesn't mean to say that this is part of the equation. Was it considered? Was this activity considered when the master plan was being developed?
It was not, no.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. I can't see any more hands there. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And can I now invite Councillor John Todd? Councillor Todd, you've got 5 minutes, and we will let you know when it's 30 seconds left.
Okay, can I open by saying that it's very gracious that Mr. Walsh agreed that I should have spoken last time. And the lack of doing that, I think, materially influenced your decision making simply on the basis of facts you may not be aware of. So I ran out the door because I am predetermined. I'm against this, and I'll develop it, and I want to comply with the Nolan rules and the code of conduct. You've seen my report, hopefully. I think the key here is the community use agreement. Councillor mentioned the need to raise funds. This is metropolitan open land. We own the land, the council, and it's rented to the rugby club for community purposes. That word, community purposes. And the agreement that we entered into in 2018 dealing with it, it says the GLA required a detailed community use agreement for affordable and accessible usage of the sports facility should be secured by the council. Now, just touching briefly on the cost of this ride, it's £26 per session, and we estimate that they make over £3,000 on a good day on a Saturday on our land to support their fund. It's utterly clinical. There is no benefit to us. And to compound it, you see why I'm so angry, is they didn't seek any planning permission. This is retrospective, but you'd never guess from the report. They crept on the land in 21 and slowly built it. The council didn't know, it didn't have any approval. And then it started operating, taking money in hand with the rugby club. I think that really is taking a liberty, a gross liberty with our council land. The council served an order on them to stop in June, and they were suggested they would seek planning permission. I want to keep hammering the community use, because what's very interesting, this matter has now been before planning in January, February and March. And I note, I think it's fair to say that Matthew is against me on perhaps using the Duke's Meadow plan or community use per se. But it's very interesting that that definition that appears in paragraph 7.9 is we don't think community use is relevant, did not appear in the report in January. So I think me digging around and raising it, Matthew, I've got the report here if you want. Okay, I am right, yeah, sometimes. Okay. So just dealing with the site, this is really premium best land in borough. We've now got Hounslow Council helped 3G pitches for hockey, football. It's a state-of-the-art operation. It's right that they are short of funds. They are not a charity. There's no registry. There's no charity registered in the Charity Commission. Okay. So I'm labouring the point, but I would say this, that, and I think Councillor Lukey would agree, Chiswick is a very affluent area, and we've got a bit of a stick in the meeting the other night. But if you look at Hogarth Youth Club, they're really struggling. People live from hand to mouth. The government report describes it as severe pockets of poverty in Chiswick. Some of us have been there and we see that. We should not be using council land to pay off people's indebtedness. And my final point is this. The lease, and I know it's not a planning matter, Matthew, but the lease says that no third party can start a commercial trade. So here we have the club who apparently allegedly have 80,000 debt, have allegedly bought this operation. How they did that, I don't know. So my point in my report is we don't know who owns it. Okay, I think I've laboured the point. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. You got questions for Councillor Todd? Councillor Bowring?
Thank you, Councillor Todd. I am quite concerned by the issues you raised, and I hope you know me well enough to take that as a genuine comment. But I'm struggling to see a material planning consideration. Can you help me with that?
Todd?
Certainly, yes. The lack of a community use, that's a condition. The building itself, you've heard what Councillor Croft says. Will you give me a second? Yeah. She quotes from the NPPF. That always says permission should be refused for development of poor design that fails to take the opportunities available for improving the character and quality of the area and the way it functions. I think the CRF's laser tag compound could be defined as poor design. It's an eyesore. Just remember, this was a pitch. The spotlights are there. And someone decided we can have a laser tag there. So we smother half the field with stone chip and we build an ugly fort. What they did was deprive another club in the borough to use that sports pitch. That's significant to me.
Hello, Councillor Todd. I mean, coming back to Dan's point, obviously, there are a lot of issues surrounding this that are non-planning relevant, but are concerns. And obviously, we have to make decisions based on the planning grounds. Obviously, you weren't in for the last meeting. Maybe where I moved that we defer it to come back for a temporary permission on the basis of some of the stuff that came up, on the basis that having an operation like this there in perpetuity under planning didn't seem acceptable, whereas a temporary use of a structure like this over that time could potentially be acceptable, particularly, to come back to the non-planning things again. If this is subsidizing a rugby club, if the club goes bust, you've lost another sports use. So, potentially. So, without wanting to get into the non-planning stuff, could, in your view, is a temporary permission a better planning step forward with the powers that we have and the things that we can consider than where we were before? And could something be acceptable to you on those terms?
I think the decision's yours. I say I've got predetermination. I feel angry it's my patch. I think you put it in a very mature fashion. The conflict I've had throughout this, and you've been very generous listening to me, is that there are two things. Hounslow, we own the land. A lot of this could be dealt with in the lease, which is not a matter for this committee. And so the council agreed to come here to see whether you'd give it a license, and then they might impose conditions. I didn't detect a sharp edge within this building that was looking after the interests of the public and the asset itself. That's why I'm so angry, and that's why I detest. If the club was short of money, your colleague mentions it, why didn't they apply for a loan? We've got lots of community funds, really, and to actually we end up saying to a trespasser, how long do you want it for? It is borderline on breathtaking. Sorry to be so cynical, but we're all reasonable people. I find it difficult to ask you a question, really. To ask an applicant for 10 years is the sort of sum money we're talking about is Christmas every week. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Bhatti.
Thank you, Councillor Todd. Just going back to Councillor Williams' point, I think genuinely we're talking about shorter lease. What would be your view if it was reduced to 2 or 3 years or round about that time period? Thank you.
I'm not known for my wisdom, but you've got to be pragmatic at times. Well, I thought if 2 years was a compromise, I'll bow to the collective experience here. I'm so biased.
Councillor Luki.
I've known Duke's Meadows for most of my life. If this rugby club, is it Chiswick Rugby Club, if this did not exist, if it went under here, in your experience, what else could take its place on the apart from a laser quest?
That's an excellent question, and it really highlights the ugliness of the site and the limitations. We've now covered half that with Stones Council, so it'd be difficult. It require a lot of money to use the land. I repeat that to offer a junior sports pitch with spotlights would be a dream for many a club and many a school in that area. Can I just ask you've all mentioned community, and someone said that you can't see a community use. Can I give you some examples of communities if I would? Yeah, but these are commercial ventures. We have a tennis club and a golf club, and we make them give, Matthew, 10,000 hours in other schools to learn to play tennis and stuff like that. There's King's House have got a school. They have unfettered access to all the state schools in the area, and they can have it for meetings and functions, that sort of thing. So I think your colleague may have asked a very good question. How do you develop but to be allowed to earn all that money without any third-party benefit But you then come back really to the definition of community and affordable. That £26 is a barrier to most people in Chiswick who use the area.
Okay, I can't see any more hands. Thank you, Councillor Todd. I believe you have to leave the room now. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Now, can I now invite the objectors, Councillor Roy Porsche? Sorry, Mr. Roy Porsche.
Creating buildings or spaces that work well for everyone, look good, will last well, and adapt to the needs of future generations. This isn't a development that meets that criterion, in my opinion. Transport. Have a look at this, and I know some people have declared interest, having played football here in the past. Well done. Stop here though. This is the entrance to the allotments. This is the end of the road. This is the famous railway culvert, you know, where we blocked it off with the planters. Now, I'm going to my allotment. There's double parking on the pavement, which is the only place it exists. There's double yellow lines there. And this person decides to park in front of the gate that I'm going to use. Now, it's not just me. There's 145 other allotment holders use that gate. They use it at the weekends, and this is when the problem occurs. Now, I'm a retiree. I can cycle. Doesn't affect me, but it affects lots of other people. And could you do the next one, Matthew? Now here, look at the mix. This is terrible. If this was a HSE meeting, we'd be sitting here and saying, what are we doing here? This is a narrow road, no pavement, double yellow lines, parking on the pavement, people mixing it up with the traffic. You can hardly get a car down there, and I'm on my bike. This is not working. And I think Councillor Williams made the point that it's always bad. Yes, it is. It's always bad. But this facility is built for 35 children per session, 6 sessions at weekends. If half get full, that means 70 to 100 extra cars. And to be honest, the car parking, we go on a little bit now. No, another one? There. Now that's the rugby club car park, going past, absolutely packed. This is me paddling through the puddles. And I can say this, it is puddle. Another one? Another one? Yeah. Again, this stresses the issue here. So there's a partial pavement, which is now parked on. There's double yellow lines, which are overparked. There's mud on this one side, and people are being forced into my path. This is, I would say this is a planning issue. Why are we making this place worse for a lot of people and putting the people who are using it actually in danger? And I'll leave it there because I think John's said most things. And as Councillor Williams probably knows, this is from January. The ones I showed you last time were from October. This is January, middle of January, on a cold Sunday. I'll leave it there. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Porsche. Okay. Questions from Mr. Porsche? Yeah. John Straub.
Yeah, I know the area quite well, and that's always been a parking nightmare. Most of it generated, I have to say, by the rugby club. I go to watch my godsons play rugby there. I cycle there, you'll be glad to know. But it's always the same. And indeed, I think one of the pictures you showed was a child coming away from rugby. There you go. He's got Chiswick Rugby Club colours on. So whilst I see what you're trying to demonstrate with the pictures, they don't really prove, and I do sympathise to a degree with your point. They don't really prove that the laser tags generating that parking. Everyone who lives in the area knows that parking's largely generated by the rugby club, and when soccer's being played there.
Yeah, go on.
No, I obviously didn't make my point. what I'm saying is it was bad last time. It's bad now. It's been bad 20 years ago. It's a problem we've all known about and nobody's ever done anything about. Okay. So this is the rugby club car park. Yes, when they built the laser tag, they knew they might have a problem. So they put in a hardcore parking area. Okay. And I'm stressing the point now. There's 35 attendees, 6 sessions on a weekend day. All right. So basically, if they're half full, you've got 3 groups of 35 people coming in, and they all come in with a car. Very, very few. There's no cycle facilities here, no place to park your bike. So that's let's say 100 cars. That's the new car park full probably twice at least. So that there is an issue here that has been exacerbated by the building of this facility. So yes, I take your point. I mean, we all know it, unfortunately.
Okay, Councillor Luki?
It was on the car parking. I mean, when Councillor Bowring and I went down there, and we climbed on the parapets there of the pallet wood built facility, we saw that there were people tending the their allotments there, yeah, to the north of the fort, and that was just on a weekday morning. Is this where the junior pitch used to be? That car park, is that what we're looking at?
Sorry, Matthew, I'm such an illustrious slide operator. Great. Could I have the next slide, please? So that's the rugby club car park. Sit still. Go on. Go on. Okay, there it is. Okay. The people going up to the left, that is people entering the car park. Okay. If you take the car that's heading towards me, trying to knock me off with his wing mirror, yes, he did. He wanted to get me. I'm going straight down to the allotment gate. So the one on the left is the new hardcore car park, and that's the one I'm talking about filling up. So that's the problem.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I can't see any more hands. Thank you, Mr. Posha. Okay.
Last time, enjoyed it. Learned a lot.
Can I invite Mr. Kevin Campbell, please, the applicant? Mr. Campbell, you will have 5 minutes, and we'll remind you when 30 seconds left, yeah?
Okay. We've prepared a statement for this planning application. So I'd just like to say good evening. Thank you all for the opportunity to provide relevant feedback and the grounds of the Dukes Meadows Development Plan and Chiswick Rugby Club. We will provide some answers that may be required. Chiswick Rugby is generally run by members, fields 3 adult teams, and has a mini section of over 200 children aged from 6 to 15 years.
Thank you. Okay, questions? Councillor William?
Thank you. Mr. Campbell, just confirm, are you a member of the rugby club, or are you speaking in a professional capacity on their behalf, or?
100% not professional. I've been the chairman at Chiswick Rugby Club for the last 13 years. I went to Chiswick School and played all my rugby career at Chiswick School.
Thank you. And I know you didn't have time to finish what you were saying. In short, is what you're saying is the laser tag is there to create income to pay for the delivery of the master plan. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. And we, at the moment, because the boathouse has gone, we only have 2 changing rooms, and we run 3 sides. So on a Saturday, we're in a terrible position where people have to get changed into 2 changing rooms, take their kit out, put it pitch side. The next people go in, do the same, and so on and so forth. So we desperately need the changing facilities, and we've lost some of the funding because of COVID or what have you. So that's where we're at.
At some point, you'll have the money to make the change, and you won't need the laser tag anymore. Is that a reasonable assumption?
That's a reasonable assumption.
Okay. And I had a third one, but I seem to be having brain fade. No, that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Boring.
I'm just curious as to why you came tonight and you didn't come to the original meeting.
Unfortunately, we were unable to because I had a health issue, and somebody that was meant to stand in for us had to go to Spain at the last minute. So I've made sure that I'm here tonight, and I apologise that no one was here to represent Chiswick Rugby Club at the last hearing.
Yeah,
I'll come back to you.
Just coming back on the original point that Councillor Williams made, did I hear that you said you needed 10 years roughly of an income stream from this to pay for the development? That's the first part of the question.
Not necessarily what we've applied for is 10 years, but we don't know how long it's going to take to build.
Okay, and the second part is you laid out quite nicely why you need it and what you're doing and the development of rugby. Are you also looking, as many other sport teams are, to try to promote women's sport as well? Because that's got a real problem with changing rooms, obviously requiring an additional changing room. Is that something you're looking at with the extension as well?
100%. In the new development, it has what you call a situation where you go in, so you go into the corridor in your clothes, everything's there, and then you come out. At the moment, the changing rooms, because they're old, were the ones where you walk down the corridor, and then you come out in the shower. So if somebody's walking past, they can see everybody. So they're up-to-date changing rooms with facilities for men, women, children, and disabled.
Okay, so just my final part of it. We heard a lot about it's not contributing to community. What I'm certainly hearing from you, whilst the laser tag itself may not be, the proceeds of it very much are driven towards enhancing and increasing participation in local sport, both from children, men and women.
That's correct, but it goes hand in hand because the laser tag facility is open to all, and he does do a lot. We do a lot for the charities, and I've got pictures on my phone that obviously I'm not going to be able to show you today of what we do. Yeah, so.
Okay, Councillor Williams, you still have a question?
Yeah, it's actually it's on this community. You did also say, and we have to bring it back to the laser tag because that's what the planning application is for. That there are community uses and benefits already being done. You have days where there are discounts and all the rest of it.
Absolutely, and the other thing, when we were hand in hand with Hounslow Council with the RFU to build the artificial pitch, the whole idea was that running alongside this, we'd build the changing facilities, which hasn't happened. So when people come, they need additional changing rooms as the children come. So we have it's the pitch that we have at Chiswick on your demise.
But on but specifically on the laser tag, you say that there are discounted days, there are cheap rate days, there are days when there is a where I'm leading to with this is if there is already community use, would if it is acceptable to the officers, would you accept a condition to have a community use agreement put in place to enshrine these benefits that you say you do on certain days of the year, so that there is in an enforceable planning condition that says we will deliver X amount of community benefit.
We'd be absolutely happy to provide evidence of what we currently do.
Well, not just evidence, but would you be happy to then?
Yeah, that's what I was going to go and say. Then be led on what you think we could do over and above.
Okay,
thank you.
Or alongside.
Assuming that's so happy with the officers with that, or I may come back with that later.
Thank you, Councillor Lal.
My first question is to you regarding the issue of the problems regarding parking and what the previous speaker had said. I assume you yourself as the chair and maybe your committee members, you have regular meetings and you're easily accessible to members of the public. Have you at any stage had representations made from anybody that the parking and the accessibility of that site is a nightmare?
The parking has never been great there. We recognise there's going to be a problem. So like I've already read out, we, at our expense, built the temporary changing car park. It's used by hockey and football. Nobody else has done anything about the car parking. And as a result, we then have the football club come into ours. So we built it for ours to ease the congestion for everyone else. But because there is a parking situation, then it's a car park that other people use.
Chair, to come back to my question, have you ever been informed by people who use this facility of the problems in accessing the site?
No, because we guide them towards the car park next to the laser tag facility.
Okay, Councillor Lal, you're still thinking. Oh, come back after. Anyway, Councillor Luki.
I don't know what Councillor Lau's thinking, but maybe your clients or your customers there may not have raised issues. Has anybody else, neighbours? We've heard from the man from the allotment, didn't catch his name. Have they raised? Have neighbours of your club raised issues about the parking?
I think
We've seen photographs.
Yeah, the parking's always been talked about by everybody, but like I say, we've built the temporary car park to try and ease that congestion.
And it hasn't.
Well, it
Or has it?
It means that our people don't get mixed up in the congestion because we direct them straight. So on our demise, not just the car park everyone's talking about, on the other car park, that's also on our demise. So we have effectively had 2 car parks and the public use both of them. So we've eased the congestion, or tried to, by building an additional temporary car park.
Thank you. Yeah.
I've got a couple more actually. Yeah, a lot of clubs have suffered, did suffer from COVID and from other external factors. And if the boathouse closed, that it wasn't closed without any warning to Chiswick Rugby Club. What alternatives? Apart from allowing the installation, because the club didn't install it, it allowed a third party to install it, beyond your lease. But let's leave that to one side. That's another matter. But what alternatives did the club make to raise money for the needs of the club? Once you realise that Latimer didn't want it, and that's another matter. I'm just concerned that there's other clubs, possibly in a similar situation, that wouldn't have done something like this, and wouldn't have done it clandestinely, without planning permission or without any discussion with the council, unless you did discuss it with anybody in particular at the council.
Can I have a question, please, Councillor
Well,
Luki?
that is a question. That is one of the questions. What has happened to the activities that have been displaced from this to allow this facility to be built?
Okay, so where the site is and where the car park is, that used to be a rugby pitch. We've moved the rugby pitch, so we've always had 2 rugby pitches. So we still have 2 rugby pitches. We've just used that space because we had our demises portioned out by the council. So the far side of Riverside Lands is for the football, the near side is for us. So the additional space that we had, because when the demises were defined, we used that to still have, nothing's changed, we still have 2 grass rugby pitches, and we have the artificial pitch.
Okay.
You haven't answered my question about funding or alternative funding.
There were several questions. So,
all right. Okay. All right. Well, try that one. Thanks.
Right. So the funding was in place with Latimer. We then lost Latimer. Like you say, COVID was an issue, and we ran out of time for the other grants. So we've had to do it in 2 phases and find additional money, i.e. laser tag, and apply for other grants, etc., to try and raise the funds.
So in the time, sorry, this is important in terms of trying to mitigate the use of metropolitan open land. How many applications have you made in the last couple of years, since before laser tag was introduced on this site? How many applications have been made, and to whom? And include what negotiations have you had with the council on this matter, your landlords, since?
We speak to the council. We speak with the RFU to try and get help for temporary, if possible, until we get this. And we've engaged with the fundraisers to continue to try and raise funds for Chiswick Rugby Club for the proceeds to go towards the planning of the new extension.
Thank you.
Sorry, just how many applications have you made for funding?
Luki.
Okay, all right. I've not had the answer.
Okay,
to
but
that.
some of
This
the
is
questions you're
important.
asking are not planning questions. Well,
Yeah, they are planning questions in terms of mitigating the use of metropolitan open land for a facility that is not sports and other activities. That's why I think it's important.
okay, I'll ask the legal.
It is
to come
sport
in,
because it's still got children outside in the fresh air.
Hang on, Constant. Yeah.
I was just trying to make comment that we need to be clear what questions we're asking the applicant. He needs that we need to be fair to him in relation to that, and also talking about other applications isn't. In my opinion, is not relevant to this application. This is the application you're considering this evening, and you need to make a planning judgment in relation to this application. If previous applications were made or not made, is not a planning consideration in my opinion.
Chair, this is not about previous planning applications. This is about applications for funding to replace what has been introduced here as Laser Quest, which is not what was intended for this site. So we're talking about planning applications. We've had 2 years, 3 years of this, perhaps, or since they were turned down for planning, for funding, and this is being used as a reason. This is being used as a reason for putting this facility up. That's what I'm talking about. It's not about other planning applications.
Thank you. Any more questions? No. Okay, all yours, Matthew. Again, can you answer those questions?
Thanks, Chair. So, as we've mentioned, the lease isn't necessarily material planning consideration, but I say necessarily for a reason. First and foremost, the consideration. Oh, microphone, I think. Thank you. So first and foremost, the consideration is, do we believe that this is a reasonable scale recreation facility for metropolitan open land? And obviously we've made the recommendation it is, but you have kind of fallen into a discussion about whether very special circumstances exist here, which is why it can be pertinent. So if you believe it's not an exception to this rule, which we talked about earlier, then you are moving on to a very special circumstances case being made. So it's like a two-tier threshold here. So you've kind of entered into that last debate. The last debate of the suitability, the lease, the using the money for the Chiswick Rugby Club, it could be a very special circumstances case, but you don't move on to that case if you believe it's an acceptable scale for the metropolitan open land. So first and foremost, I do, is it a suitable scale for metropolitan open lands? Then community use has been talked about. Community use has now been introduced at this stage. Yes, you can use a planning condition to secure community use. Design's been spoken of, but again, it's a laser tag. Is the design, given it's not of a huge scale, it's behind screening, fencing, is the design sufficiently bad to detract from the metropolitan open lands? That's for your consideration. And transport's come up, and sorry, a transport planner isn't here tonight. It did come up last time as well. And I think you've been touching on it. It's almost a victim of its own success. You want to use Fuchs Meadow, therefore there's going to be increased parking. There needs to be a wider strategy for the management of that parking, which is my understanding is in place. There is a plan for Dukes Meadow and parking. It's just coming from our transport planners. With the introduction of the Dukes Meadow master plan, will possibly exacerbate the issue as it is at the moment without this in place. So in terms of this individual application, I'm suggesting the transport situation isn't going to be worse than if it was the master plan was implemented, and this use can fit into that wider master plan for managing transport issues. I think that was all I was going to say, so I'll leave it at that if that's okay.
Thank you, Matthew. Okay, question, Councillor Boring.
Was the transport assessment done as part of this application, and can the committee impose by condition some cycle parking?
No, there was not a transport statement. As I say, it fitted into the wider discussion about the Dukes Meadow master plan. And yes, you can do a condition for cycle parking. Looking at Jimmy, who's nodding. So yes, you can. Yes.
Any more questions? Okay, Councillor Luki.
Well, if that's the case, if Councillor Bowring is suggesting that we have a condition for cycle parking, where is the travel plan for this location, for this application? Where is our sustainable travel plan for this? If someone else is talking about, Councillor Williams mentioned and the applicant mentioned the conditions for community use, whatever they would be. We've had a faint explanation that we do charity gigs. Okay, fine, but what are they? How are we going to how are we going to describe that and put it in a condition? We know what conditions we put in for the tennis and for the golf a bit further on round the corner. But what are we looking at here? What guarantees do we have that that this the temporary nature, and I think 10 years is a pretty long is too long. I would with the local councillor. I would say 1 year, but if local councillor Amy Croft says 3 years, I think that's she's put her mind to this, and I wouldn't want to go more than that. But we don't want this to drift. It's been allowed to drift, and it's gone in. It's been developed without any consideration and any discussion. Well, not by anybody officially, perhaps. Let's get some proper, robust conditions on this. If that's what you're minded, the rest of the committee is minded to do. I'm minded to refuse it myself, but that's for a little bit of a later debate, if you like. But I want to hear from the officers.
Yeah.
What safeguarding we can have here for the neighbouring, the allotments. There's a lot of allotments there. A lot of you see them on the train as you come past from.
Look, you're getting into debate already.
Yeah,
now.
well, okay. Well, they're parking then. Parking, travel plan, conditions in terms of community use. Recording of that community use. You never record that. I've never seen that. When I did ask for that, you weren't there. Yeah, you weren't here at the time, Director of Planning. The previous Director of Planning was there when we discussed the tennis. How are we monitoring this? How are we going to monitor the promises that are being made here? Because so far, it's been quite slapdash.
So the reason transport planners didn't object to this application was, as I say, because there's a wider plan in place for the Dukes Meadow master plan. But I'm not going to enter into, obviously not argue with you, but if you were minded to do so, a travel plan is again a reasonable condition to attach to this application. If you were minded to do so, cycle parking, as we talked about, could be in there. Obviously, you've talked about the community use agreement, and then yes, again, it's up to you if you want to put on a temporary time period, amend that condition as well. Those are 4 conditions that have been put forward, which are legally sound, I would suggest.
Okay, yeah, go on, Vincent.
Just add to that, and on the community use, what the sort of condition that could be applied would be the submission of a community use strategy for approval by local planning authority. That would set out the specifics of what those community uses were, and then that would be for our approval. So that's the sort of thing that we could do as a condition.
Thank you, Vincent. Yeah, I can't see any more hands there. Okay, it's open for debate. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Obviously, we've been on a bit of a journey with this application since it came before us last time. I think where the debate got to at the end of that meeting was, I don't think the committee was satisfied that this was an acceptable use in perpetuity, and that was why there was a view that we should look to see if we could get a time-limited grant done, and that is what is come before us this evening. I don't question that it's a recreational use. I've been paintballing before. It's quite a lot of fun. I actually think this would be quite a good Labour away day is for us to go down the laser tag. I'm looking forward to it. Yeah. My team versus your team, Tony. I reckon it'll be a good night.
He's taking real guns.
He's taking real guns. Maybe I want to be on his team then. But look.
Okay. Yeah.
But my point is that it has to be based on the planning. Do I believe that for a temporary period of time in metropolitan open land, this is an appropriate use? No. Do I think it's inappropriate as it is within the terms? No. I'm not prescriptive on what people choose to do for recreation. It clearly is a recreational use to do this it may not be for everyone, and there's plenty of other recreational uses if people want it. So I don't have an issue on that ground. We all know the transport is rubbish down there and has been a problem for a very long time. I don't see that it is materially worse here because of that, and I don't think you can pin all the traffic problems created by rugby, football, and all the rest of it. And on this one application. So I don't think that stands up. I am pleased to hear that there is a plan coming forward generally, and I think this is something for the, there are lots of issues here for the council to pick up more broadly about the management of this site and the management of other things, but that isn't what we're here to talk about. I'm pleased that they've come back for a temporary application. We didn't have to, but they have. I'm pleased that they're prepared to enter into a community use agreement, which, we've put on the table tonight. He said they'll do it, and on the things that aren't relevant with a time period will enable us to see the proof in the pudding. Does anything else emerge towards the development plan that is in place from the funding that they say that they're getting for the rugby club to build the facilities it needs? And we'll be able to test that. And when it comes, and that can go away and be talked about where it's supposed to be, which isn't here at this meeting. So, but we've created the space, I think, for that conversation and that review to happen elsewhere, and for that conversation to be had, which no doubt plenty of members around the table will want to pick up with our leadership. So coming back to the planning grounds, I don't see a big problem with it where it is, with the conditions we want to put on tonight. I'm relatively sanguine about the amount of time. I would have gone for 5 years personally, rather than 3. But I do think that we've got it to a place where it's acceptable to me anyway, and I open it to everyone else to say what they want to say.
Thank you, Councillor Bowring.
Yeah, we definitely have been on a journey with this, and I've considered approval, considered refusal, and we deferred it. So I've gone through the whole thing. I'm really actually quite unsure about this, and I'm quite uneasy, yet quite sympathetic to a lot of what I've heard. I think my position would be best. I think if Councillor Lukey talked about refusal, I think if refusal came, I'd probably abstain. That's where I am. So I think, again, talking about the years, we heard 3 years from Councillor Croft, 5 years from Councillor Williams, 1 year perhaps from Councillor Lukey. I think, God willing, we will still be on this planning committee in 2 years' time, or maybe subject to greater forces. I think 2 years is the right amount of time. I think hopefully we could then see this application come forward again, and I would expect to see a very detailed financial analysis of how it's supporting the extension. So I think 2 years, I'm not going to propose it in case Councillor Lukey wants to propose refusal first, but I think 2 years along with conditions of a travel plan, cycle parking for 20 Sheffield stands, community use strategy.
Thank you, Councillor Sprout.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. When this first came to us, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors around it, and I'm really pleased that the club have actually come and given us a little bit of clarity on this. Matthew's laid out quite clearly what the areas are we need to concentrate on, and there's been quite a bit of emotion thrown at it, and so quite a few accusations thrown around as well, I have to say. But I think to boil it all down, what we have is a local sports club who's trying to promote its sport, who had lots of opportunities to try to get funding to improve its facilities. For different reasons, they fell away. They've tried to be innovative. They've come up with a scheme to raise money to support their club, to increase participation in sport in the borough, which is something as a council we want to do, and not just increase participation in sport across the borough, increase it to target groups, to children and to women, which is all to be absolutely commended. I don't agree with 2 years, because that's almost what the central government does to the council. It says, come back in 2 years, come back in a year. No, we give them 5 years, we give them a decent run at it, so they can raise some funding, they can get themselves squared away, and they maybe come back in 5 years with a good idea of where they are. There's the car parking, there's the Sheffield stands. It's all tinsel we can put around the outside of it, but the core thing is, what we want to do is to help a well-respected sports club stay afloat, broaden its appeal, increase the amount of people who can play that sport, and help them. What we shouldn't be doing, the clubs had one leg chopped from underneath it with funding. Let's not kick the other one away as the local council. Let's support them. Let's give them 5 years. Sure, let's put some conditions in. Firstly, it's 5 years. Secondly, let's leave it up to planning officers to come up with more community use elements into the laser tag. So it does actually reflect more of a community use. And we get a win-win out of this. We get a thriving sports club, we get community use, and we get more people playing sport.
Councillor Luki?
Unless anyone else wanted to speak before me, I've spoken already. But
Oh, sorry.
if Councillor
Yeah.
Lau wants it, but I do.
Okay, you want to?
I do want to speak again.
Okay, Councillor
Chair, yeah. So quite clearly, I think as a council, we're quite supportive of the rugby club to maintain and sustain itself financially. And I think we've seen on previous applications for planning developments on that site, we've helped them as much as we can in developing that site in terms of planning applications for a Montessori school, increase the function, room size, etc., to do whatever it can to increase the revenue generated from that site. Having said that, I think this planning application is weak. We've already alluded to exception that a community use criteria should be built into this application, which we're going to. It has been suggested that we delegate that to officers to come with something. So that's missing. That should have been in there in the first instance. The second thing is that look, I'm not from that particular part of the world, and I'm not too familiar with it. But what I've seen, and I mentioned it earlier, is the accessibility of that site. Yes, you've increased the parking spaces, but it looks like there's an accessibility issue on that site. And I think in this application, we're putting the cart before the horse. Yeah, you've mentioned about sort of the whole plan for the whole area, etc. Well, you know, that should be up front first, and then we can move on, because residents expect us as a planning committee to be systematic in what we do. Yeah, here we have a suggestion, build it and they will come. Yes, they will come, and they'll be kicking and screaming at the council, why didn't you plan it properly? That's my fear. The other thing is in terms of the time frame. Again, Councillor Croft, I think, put forward a 3-year time span, and I agree with Councillor John Stroud that sometimes, you know, planning this kind of stuff does take a little bit more time and to fully embed whatever financial changes they're trying to do with that site. So that I'll leave up to other councillors to put forward some suitable timeframes. But 10 years far too long. That's off the table completely. But I think this application, as it stands, for me, it's not all there. It's weak. And one more thing. In the report, public accessibility. You've got 2 paragraphs in there about transport, and the public accessibility is poor. You admit that it's poor. The public transport network for that site is poor. So we will definitely be relying on vehicle or bikes to get to and fro from that site. Yeah, so that in itself is a big weakness as well. So it's not holistic, it's not systematic, and that's my reservations.
Thank you, Councillor Lal. Councillor Luki?
I think this, you know, I think the ambition of the club. The ambition of the club is great, but I do feel that this has taken too long to come to us. First, it came to us. First it went ahead. It was built. I don't, without any discussion or without any planning application. Then it's then when they got caught out, they came with a planning application. They came up with a slapdash planning application, I believe, and I think the reporting of it, bringing it to the committee, was not complete, and there are a number of issues that have been brought up by lay members here. Yeah, traffic, transport, community use, length of time, and that's and I think that's again, that's not fair. That's not fair on us as councillors to have to decide that and bring these things up. It's not fair on neighbouring users. And in a way, it's not fair on the rugby club itself, because that just gives them a bit of a ticket. We haven't heard, even though they were asked, we haven't heard that there's applications have been made for funding, Chair. And there's no guarantee that after however number of years, we allow, whether it's 10, 5, 3, 2, 1. There are a number of possibilities. We're not guaranteed that there's a funding strategy. If that's allowed in planning, if that's allowed as a condition of permission, then perhaps we should add that to it. What we haven't heard from officers is, when will the Dukes Meadows master plan be coming on stream? When will that be developed? When will this part of the Dukes Meadows be added to it? The other thing that we haven't seen here is the impact of the local traffic network, because before you could drive under the bridge there at the railway from the western side of Dukes Meadows, from the Chiswick Bridge side, and that's changed. That will probably allows more cars to come. So with that, and I know people, 5 years, 10 years, and I will try it with my colleagues here, and I will move refusal.
Mr. Bhatti, you want to speak? Yeah, I'll take Mr. Bhatti then. Yeah, okay, Mr. Bhatti.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, very interesting debate. There are obviously several concerns from colleagues here. I'm really more towards Councillor Bowring's point, 2 to 3, and then on the other hand, there's my colleague John over there with 5 years. Maybe we ought to look at some compromise between the two sort of points. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so Councillor Luki has proposed a refusal at the moment. Anybody seconding that? Councillor Lal seconding. Sorry, yeah. We have to have a reason for that. That's what I'm asking. Yeah. Planning reasons, please. Councillor.
Loss of amenity, impact on metropolitan open land, impact on traffic.
Loss of amenity. So impacting metropolitan land. Yeah. Transport. Yeah. What loss of amenity? Can you expand on that one? Sorry.
To other users of Dukes Meadows. And visual amenity too. Thank you, Councillor Bowring.
Loss of amenity to other users of the park. Yeah, I understand, but we need to attach it to a policy here, because we may be arguing an appeal, so we need to be quite clear about what it is. Visual impact on the park, possibly we could link that to the metropolitan open land, so the openness, so that could be one reason. Transport, again, we said, have failed to demonstrate that it's reasonable, but loss of amenity to users of the park, I don't think it's been fleshed out.
Impact on other users, on the allotments, for example. There is a visual impact of this on the allotments too, and noise, and the peaceful use of the of neighbouring facilities. Allotments particularly. I know you get a bit of shouting in rugby, you get a bit of shouting in hockey.
I understand the reason. So when taking, I'm going to suggest that allotments don't have the protection from noise that you would normally afford to a residential property, say, for instance. So I don't believe that's a particularly strong reason, but I understand the reason. So that's been presented to you.
Add sustainability as well. It's taken away. Look, it's taken away greenness. It's taken away green fields and being replaced by aggregate. You're laughing. You're smiling, Jack. Perhaps you can help out. It's taken away. It's taken away green space being replaced by wooden structures and being replaced by gravel and similar. Look, I've got 3 planners here. Perhaps you don't want this. You're not happy with this suggestion.
So you're hammering away at the same reason for refusal. I think the impact on metropolitan land, which is green, it should be preserved for green and openness. That's the intention of metropolitan open land. So if you don't mind me saying that, that's maybe still the same reason for refusal that we've said, the impact on the openness of metropolitan open land.
Right. Okay. Maybe you want to come and sit where I'm sitting. Can you give me the reasons that I've given just now? Reiterate, please.
I asked Jimmy to explain, please. Are you okay? Go on.
Yeah, no, I was about to say, yeah, I think that's a good idea that the planning officer repeat the reasons so everybody's clear back. But I think all the officers trying to do is give the best chance to support those reasons at any potential appeal. So you're in the position of the local planning authority this evening, and it's your job to provide those reasons. And in fairness for officers to put some meat on those, so asking about policy, etc., and clarifying, I think is fully justifiable.
Jimmy, before they do that, can I just suggest one then to help out Councillor Luke? You mentioned earlier, Matthew, you alluded to the fact that we may be gearing up towards basically disagreeing with the fact that it didn't qualify for special circumstances. Could you allude on the grounds on which?
No, you need planning grounds before you can get to that point.
I thought Matthew was suggesting that we had reached a point where we were basically questioning the status of the application didn't meet the threshold 2 that he was setting out before, and that might be a valid. Great. Help me out, Matthew. You put it on the table earlier.
Okay,
I think he was trying to help you out.
Take a step
earlier,
back
Tony.
again. The purpose of
Matthew.
Greenbelt and Metropolitan Open Land is it's the openness, to preserve the openness. That's need for it. So there are exceptions to this. One of the exceptions is suitably sized recreational facilities. So if you're talking about design, if you're talking about loss of openness, then these are not suitably sized recreational facilities. So you would be conflicting with Metropolitan Open Land and Greenbelt policies, and we could feed all of that into a reason for refusal. So your reason refusal would be impact on the openness, the design of the scheme, and you could even go so far as lack of accessibility to the site. So those are all folded into one reason. That's why I keep saying that's one reason, and that would strengthen that one reason for refusal.
Thank you, Matthew. That seems like the stronger case then. Going that not that I think we should be refusing it, but I'm happy to help you out, Tony, in case we do.
Thank you.
You are
everyone.
in
Yeah,
planning
thank you,
there,
Matthew.
Councillor
So
Williams.
can you explain those reasons again, please, before I take a vote?
So impact on metropolitan open land and impact on transport. So I folded into those 2 reasons, if that's okay with everyone around the table. So sorry, and when I say impact on transport, so the increased use of the site is to the detriment of transport conditions in the area. Low peak has been mentioned as well. We can again fold that into another reason. Sorry, the same reason.
Thank you. Okay. Now we're taking a vote for refusal of this application. Okay, hands up for that, please. Refusal. 2. Okay. Oh, 3. Okay. Now, opposite to that, people who don't want to refuse it. Yeah, go on then. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah. Okay, so that's cancelled. Right, Councillor Luki. We'll go for a abstention. Sorry, any abstentions? Yeah, 3 abstentions. I forgot that. Yeah. Okay, now that's been done. Now we go for approval now.
Yeah.
With the condition. Can somebody?
Yeah, I'd like to recommend.
Can I go back to what I originally said? But I said I'd hold off in case Councillor Luki wanted to move refusal. I'm suggesting 2 years, which will. There's too many unanswered questions here, and 2 years will allow this committee, if we're still here, to re-scrutinise it in 2 years. Which is they could put in the same condition. They don't need to the same application. They don't need to repeat the paperwork.
Again,
It'll give us the chance.
mentioned that 2 years might be too small because there are planning applications going on or something.
I think we can re-scrutinise it in 2 years, which is why I'm moving for 2 years with the conditions of a travel plan, cycle parking for 20 Sheffield stands, a community use strategy.
Go on.
I'll take Councillor Baring's proposal, but I wish to amend it to 5 years, please.
Councillor Luki, yeah.
Look, I think. Look, I will, having moved refusal, I will accept I will support Councillor Baring's 2 years, and the reason being is as I explained earlier on when I was arguing, 5 years that's been too generous, and sometimes some councillors are too generous.
Okay, Councillor Luki,
can I just say?
Can I just stop you right there?
Yeah.
it's been proposed there and their amendment there. I'll take a vote for that. Do you want to go for 2 years or you want to go for 5 years? Can I have a vote on that, please? 2 years first. Who wants to go for 2 years? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for 2 years. 9. Yep. They just taken for 2 years. So obviously he's got more vote for 2 years. So okay. So the proposal is approve it for 2 years.
Sorry, Councillor, can I just
Yeah,
clarify
go
all the conditions then? So what you're voting on now following that is that additional conditions for a travel plan for cycle parking, which has been actually stated as 20 Sheffield stands. That's been quite prescriptive. The community use agreement to be submitted and approved in writing by the local planning authority, and then a temporary period of 2 years is what the 4 conditions that are now being voted on, if that's okay with everybody.
Matthew,
Yes,
do you have
yes,
are you suggesting 20 Sheffield stands is the wrong thing, or you?
No, I'm not sorry.
I'm
I'm saying it's been stated because you've stated that's what we're going to write down on the condition now. So just to be clear.
Well,
that's what I think.
We don't have a traffic planner here today, do we? It could be more.
In which case, would you delegate it? So the condition will be more open-ended. You're delegated authority
I'd
to us
delegate
to
a minimum of 20 Sheffield
minimum
stands.
stands. Okay.
More if necessary.
And Chair, the
Mr.
other
Campbell and Ms. Campbell, members now, okay? Sorry.
and the other, if we're looking at 2 years, we do want to see a robust funding plan as well. Is that conditionable, Vincent?
I don't think it is. On the basis that the application wasn't made on the basis of exceptional circumstances. If it was, I think there may be a case for that, but not on this, not on these grounds. No.
Okay, well that'll be up to the landlord then, won't it?
Okay, that's fine. We had approval now. Sorry, approval for 2 years, condition for 2 years. And with those conditions, who is on favor of that? Sorry, we haven't had a seconder yet. Oh, seconding it. Okay. Okay, we'll have a vote for approval up to 2 years with those conditions. Unanimous, yeah. Against? Abstentions? It's been approved for 2 years, yeah. And next item is 6, addendum report. I think members have seen it. 7, item 7 is update on pages 39 to 42. It's for noting. Yep.
Quick question on that. I've been written to by a couple.
Oh, sorry.
You come back in. You're forgiven. Sorry. Yeah, question. A couple of folk have asked me that when they try to look at the council's website for information on enforcement and historic planning applications, the link appears not to work. And also it appears that we've not done any enforcement since 2022, which is clearly not true. But this is what we might be able to see it from the intraweb, but I'm told, and I haven't tested it myself, that the public can't get to see it from the internet, intraweb or blogosphere. Yeah.
So we hadn't upgraded the IT system recently, which resulted in some concerns. So all of them will be passed on. But notwithstanding that, the enforcement notices were temporarily taken down from our website because there are some GDPR concerns raised with their content. We, in planning, very much believe that they need to be shown. They do need to be shown. Enforcement notices should be part of the online register. So very much hope they'll be back online shortly. It's just I need to do an assessment of the risks of it. So there may be redactions attached to them, but they will be back online as soon as we can get them back online.
Thank you very much, Matthew.
Okay, any more? Yeah, Councillor Luki.
Just on this, does the planning department deal with HMO applications, or is that housing?
It's the housing enforcement team's part of planning and buildings. Yeah.
But if somebody applies for HMO,
it's the housing enforcement team, which forms part of the planning and buildings directorate.
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
I'm just looking at. I've been looking at a lot of stats lately of outstanding applications. Just in my ward, there are probably about 30. How do we go about what input does planning have on those to see if properties are suitable for.
So it's
for
a separate
HMOs.
process for applications for HMO license dealt with outside of the planning process. So they're separate. They happen to form part of the same directorate. But if there are planning matters that arise out of those applications, they're forwarded on to development management and planning enforcement. Yeah. But if you've got any particular ones you want to raise with me, send me an email.
I will send you my list.
Yeah.
And we'll
Go
have a
for
look.
it.
And I would ask, and I would recommend to other councillors to request a list of outstanding HMO applications, because they will turn up and bite us. I've got some going back 3 years. In my ward, and thank you also, Vincent, for your activity lately on the old Borough Road site. But there are again plenty more large applications that we've not really looked at their conditions of late. And I mentioned the tennis club. We haven't had a report back, and we're going to get a report back regularly. All right, maybe you'll write to Birmingham and ask Scanlon where it is. But we'd like to see updates on Section 106s, particularly community use, which we've discussed tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Luki. So this item is for noting. Is it noted here? Okay. Item 8, I have not been informed of any other business. Item 9, next meeting is going to be 13th of April 2023. With this meeting closed. Thank you very much and good night. Thank you for attending.